Welcome to the Attempting Stand-Up Comedy Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Cambridge. On this episode, we step into the studio and have a conversation with professional comedian David Dean. He's out of Huntington, Indiana, but he got his start in stand-up comedy at Second City in Chicago. This conversation leads us down a path of remembering when he took the mic for the first time. So let's enjoy this conversation. We're going to learn about stand-up comedy and the craft, but also what it takes to stay on the road for literally more than 3 decades. Let's enjoy this conversation with professional comedian David Dean. So today's a conversation. We have known each other for a while, but you're obviously a comic on the road doing stand-up, doing live events, and I'd love to pick your brain a little bit. How's that sound?
Okay. Yeah, I'm here for you.
You know, your early days were out of a city called Chicago. I don't know if you're a sports fan, are you?
Oh, absolutely.
Any favorite teams?
If it comes out of Chicago, it's got to be good, other than the White Sox.
Okay.
And in fact, when I said that team, I just got a rash.
Oh, geez. It already formed that fast.
White Sox will do that to you.
Oh, geez. So, David, I know that you're not an overnight success. You have gone through the ranks, and that's what I love about you. Most people don't understand that comedy happens through the fire process. You have definitely taught me much about this. What was your earliest memory of attempting stand-up comedy?
Well, first, thanks for having me. I appreciate it very much. This is a privilege and it's an honor. And secondly, you used the word success. I don't know if I've hit that success rank on the entertainment ladder. I'm still baby stepping, but I'm thankful that I'm able to do this for a living. My friend Matt Crooker said I'm the best unknown comic that he's ever booked.
Nice.
That's a compliment. So what was the question again? Squirrel?
Squirrel. What color is a squirrel? The early days, what do you remember about your beginnings in attempting stand-up? Think way back.
Honestly, I mean, this is the 22, 25-year-old David Dean talking. It was never about money. It was never about success. It was never about accolades or awards. Honestly, it was just the hunger and joy of getting behind a microphone and standing in front of a crowd. Honestly, my wife, we were married young, 22, 23. She had a job at North American Baptist in Elmhurst, Illinois. So it was a steady income, had insurance. That may, and kudos to my wife, it may have been the catalyst to say, go try it. It may not work.
Sure.
But there's something stable here at the house, which affords you the opportunity to go and try and to fail miserably and maybe get a few shekels here and there. And I was doing this sounds crazy, but like I was a juggler and a clown. I was doing Renaissance festivals on the weekend, 2-hour walk around with balloon animals and juggling. They'd give you like $400 or $500 cash. I was doing some private Christmas parties. So a lot of that, those side hustles.
Right.
But the passion was, I knew I wasn't going to stand in front of people and juggle for the rest of my life or be a clown. And kudos to the people that do it for a living. I wanted to get on stage as much as possible, not because I needed it for my ego, but it felt like I was going to work.
Mm-hmm. That must have been frustrating at some point when you're having to work through the craft. When you're at the festivals, what was it that those events taught you that you remember that you're holding on to today?
The rejection was always incredible motivation for my, it was like coal for my comedic stove, if you will.
I like that.
When I was going to a birthday party or a Boy Scout blue and gold banquet or an event that I knew I didn't want to go to, but they were paying me to entertain and be funny.
Right.
again, it wasn't about the money. It was just the craft, the
Hmm.
art, the work, doing it. But doing those did motivate me to say, I'm going to work harder at being a comic so I'm not doing balloon animals at children's parties for the rest of my life.
Rejection. Anyone that steps in front of a crowd or behind a microphone, how do you handle rejection? Obviously, every night it's a different form of rejection, even though there's funny and fun happening.
Yeah, I think in the mind of a comic, when you're in front of 300 people, you're looking at the 280 that are laughing, but you're also laser focused on the 20 that are staring with their
Mm-hmm.
arms folded. They either don't like you, they don't like the humor, or they're just not they're not fun people.
Okay.
You don't know the psychology, but that is a form of rejection that also motivates.
You mentioned psychology. You and I have been on the road together a bunch. I know that you're an avid reader, and you brought up that word psychology. Where does psychology fit in this craft of stand-up comedy?
I may I may be somewhat of an anomaly because a lot of comics you talk to, they were a class clown and they longed for attention or they were rejected at home.
Mm-hmm.
No one paid attention to them, so the only form of attention they received was in a classroom or disrupting, you know,
So they were acting out
the
to get
kids.
attention.
Yeah, and I just I wasn't I didn't have that. I just even to this day I'm somewhat of an introvert. I if you put me on the spot, it's super awkward. If you allow me to just casually walk into a situation and be silly and
Mm-hmm.
do a snide remark or heckle from the I like that. I don't need to be pushed out front to have people look at me. It's
Mm-hmm.
my job, but I never had that need for look at me, pay
Right.
attention to me. I got sent to the principal's office. Isn't this funny? No, I didn't.
Yeah,
So
but
there was some
you're
that was
see
just that maybe that psychology of I had affirmation at home. I don't need to come to school and disrupt a class or a Sunday
mm,
school in order to get it.
yeah. Yeah, jumping through that hurdle of rejection, if you have that internal, confidence or calmness. But your title for your CD, Clap for Me, that was a cool title.
Yeah, I fought it a little bit.
So early days, let's go back to Chicago. Obviously, some good sports, definitely some great food. You began a start in stand-up comedy at a place called Second City. What
Mhm.
led you to Second City, and what was that journey like to begin?
I was working at a radio station in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I was the guy writing uh, carbon commercials and also doing characters. They had an AM FM station. It was owned by Federated Media, and it was WQHK AM Country,
Wow,
WMEE FM Pop.
you
So I
you
was not only
remember all
writing,
this? That's
oh yeah,
amazing.
I
I
was
love it.
1920. So I was working writing commercial carbon. They bring in an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Tire Wurtenberger Tire would come in. Hey, David, we need a 30-second spot. So I would write it, and oftentimes it included characters. It was a dad and son, or a hill. Well, come on in here to Wurtenberger Tire Thursday from 5 to 7. We'll take care of your tires if you want those ball bearings fixed. So I would do all this goofy, and most of it was rejected. They're like, that's too much.
Really?
Salesmen are like, no, it's too over the top. Tone it down. So I would tone it down. But I also did characters for AM and FM radio. I was
Okay.
Earl Hudnut was a character on the Country Channel, and then Biff Marley, who was a yuppie, he was on FM radio, and he made an appearance. So I would do these, and I
Wow.
loved it, and and ratings took off not because of me, but because of the talent, on air talent, and they wanted to sign a 3-year contract, and I thought to myself, huh, I'm looking at you right now. You're in a studio. I couldn't imagine being in a studio for the next 3 years doing this. And
Right.
so I said, I'm going to Chicago. I don't want to sign a 3-year contract. And I went to Chicago, went to Second City. I remember my parents took me on the Labor Day
Wow.
weekend of 1986. They packed up my car. They drove behind me, went into Chicago,
That's
dropped me off
amazing.
with a friend I did not know, but they were with a Moody Bible. It was a friend of a friend. I stayed in their basement in Chicago.
Hmm.
And I remember after 3 nights, uh, I got the nerve to go to Second City and audition.
Wow.
and I got rejected. I remember driving in my Chevy Cavalier, this 1983 Chevy Cavalier, this little 2-door 5-speed, driving back to this friend's basement. And I got down in the basement, I sat there and I thought, I turned down a 3-year contract with a radio station to pay good money. I packed up everything I owned, which isn't much, moved to Chicago, and I went to pursue my dream. And they said, "You're not for us." I can remember it like it was last night, Tim. I sat in the basement of the stranger's house going, now what?
What was the next step?
There was a knockoff to Second City, a place called the Improv Olympic, IO, still in business over on the Northwest side. And I went there and auditioned and got in. So we took classes and performed simultaneously. It was comedy by fire. So we would do improvisational comedy with 6 or 7 other people, and there were like different levels. And then you would do shows at night, improvisational shows, sometimes in front of 100 people, but oftentimes in front of 25 people, and maybe 10 were sober. And it was just a long, narrow hallway right at the corner of Belmont and Racine on the northwest side of Chicago at the Improv Olympic. And they've moved since. They're over on North Clark Street now, still in operation. But I did that for 2 years. And I was doing side hustles, entertaining on the side, and had not met my wife yet. And after a couple, 2 or 3 years, the instructor at Improv Olympic, his name was Del Close. He's a improvisational guru. And he didn't have his license. So he was having me drive him home after classes. And he's like, "Yeah, you need to move on." He's smoking in my car. "It's time to move on. You've maxed out. You've done everything you can do here at Improv Olympic. Go try it again at Second City." And that's where he had started, but they had kind of given him the exile because he was the one that kind of provided the drugs for John Belushi when Belushi died. And so they kicked him out, and he starts improv. But he says to me, "Go back to the king. Go back to Improv Mecca and try it again." And I tried it again and got in.
So, okay, you were rejected by Second City. I'm trying to create this narrative timeline because it's influential to watch you jump over these hurdles of rejection. It didn't happen once. You skipped out on the radio contract. You go to Second City. They reject you. You go to the Improv. Then you go back to Second City. When you got back to Second City, what was that like for you, and how was it different than the first time?
When I stepped on the stage to Second City the second time to audition, it was so liberating. I felt so free. I thought, even if I fail or they don't want me, I've had a great 2 years training and working at Improv Olympic and doing some clubs on the side. And I didn't have any apprehension. I just went up, and what you're supposed to do with improv is go with a clear mind and let the stream of consciousness just come out of you. Don't prep, don't think, don't plan, which has been kind of my mantra for life. Jump in and do it. And it was so liberating and fun.
No, that's intense.
And they said, "You're in." And so I began doing the different levels of Second City, the exact same pattern I did at Improv Olympic, but at a higher, more talented, sophisticated level with Second City.
So then you, as a performer, what was the work like for you on both sides of this comedy, craft building, attempting stand-up? You had the writing, the comedy, and then you had the performing. Were either of those sides easier for you? And then what was it like for you to work on the content? Because obviously having a catalog of jokes doesn't happen overnight.
No. The improv was extremely difficult. It was easy. Easy in the sense that you didn't prepare.
Okay. You had technique training on how to work through.
The first rule of improv is listen and react. If you're not listening, you're missing the dialogue. You're missing out on what the person on the stage is saying to you in order to create the scene. If you're thinking about just the joke, it improv fails. But improvisation is built on action, reaction, listening, responding, and that's difficult for a lot of comics. So I had to almost flip the script a bit, because with stand up, it's your show, it's your baby, it's your material, and you are giving to the people what you think is funny. You have put all these ingredients together, you put it in the comedic oven, and now you're serving it to the customers.
Sure.
With improv, it's you're licking your finger and sticking it in all these different ingredients and go, does that work? Does that one work? Does that taste good? Does that taste good? So there's two different frames of mind with these art forms. It was tricky, but I enjoyed the challenge.
Yeah. And then on the stage for you, I've noticed, and we've been on the road, fortunately, together, you are amazing at crowd work, obviously, in the moment. And I've even had that feedback after the comedy events that we've done with Laugh All Night around the country. You have stepped on stage. You have a set. You have bits. You have comedy jokes you've written, which are amazing. But you also have an amazing natural presence with the crowd. What is that in you? Because most comics, the phrase is they step on the laughter. They're not necessarily, reading the room right. What does that look like for you when you get on stage in regards to the mindset of a comedian to understand not just the material, but the audience?
No, that's a good question. I think what I've learned from those days in Chicago is what I'm doing now is a hybrid of those two worlds. They've collided, the world of improvisation and the world of stand-up comedy. If those two could have a baby, that's what I'm doing now. I'm taking my material that I think is funny, that I've written and rehearsed, but I'm also keenly aware of the room. If someone walks in late, if someone gets up and leaves, if someone's on their phone, if someone's giggling too loud, if someone giggles and snorts. So all those things that are happening in the room, if you don't have any kind of situational awareness where you're missing that, you're missing out on a bit. Now, it's risky because not every time does it have like a comedy explosion, a laughter moment, but you still have to take the chance because you're commenting on what everybody's watching. If you're doing a show, 500 people, 300 people, and you're 10 minutes in and a couple walks in late and they mosey up and sit down in the front row, I can feel my cadence, my rhythm with the audience kind of go out the window because they're watching that couple. So why not say what everybody's thinking, right?
Yes.
Why not address the couple in the room?
So saying what others are thinking, and I know in Steve Martin's book, Born Standing Up, he talks about focus in a room where comedy works best without distraction. But you take a distraction in a room as a comic and you leverage that for, you call it a comedy explosion. That's pretty intense. I love that. Saying what they're thinking, you're taking that disruption and you're going, okay, I'm going to draw attention, but how do you spin it for something that generates a laugh?
You don't know until you're in the moment. That's the beauty of comedy. You don't know what you've created until you say it.
Right.
You could say 5 things and 3 hit, 2 drop. You still have to, you're like a salesman. You're a comedic salesman. I'm going to continue to knock on doors until I make a sale.
So it's like a card dealer. You're just dealing cards.
Kinda.
And you're waiting for one to hit.
You're hoping for a blackjack.
Right.
That's what you're hoping for.
Right.
But you don't know it until the dealer flips the card over. That's the excitement.
Comedy
of
poker.
standing
Comedy
in front
poker.
of a crowd. Yeah.
Or blackjack.
Yeah.
I want to dive into some of your routines, some of your writing, because in attempting stand up, and you and I have been in the car together. We were driving through Texas, And I remember we were going to a theater to do a show. We had just done an event the night before for Laugh All Night. And, I'm attempting stand up. I am as green and virgin as they come right now. And it's fun to create and have the freedom to try. And I was stumbling across or over my words, and I accidentally said I failed homeschool in the car. And you and I have had some fun moments just kind of noodling with ideas. You've helped me work on a bit where I talked about having a homeschool teacher, but then I got a substitute teacher named Jean-Pierre Francois Louis Bertrand, and he told me I could call him Larry. But the writing process for you are a true writer. Is there a routine for you with this? Because when I'm with you, I try to have some things rub off, and that's just that freedom to kind of, like, as you said earlier, the ingredients, mix them up, and then something's going to taste right. Yeah. Is there something for you that works? Process?
Well, I don't have a magic formula, no. And I'm not great. I'm not a student at sitting down from noon to 2 every day and just writing.
Right.
But my mind is constantly listening and recording. And at the end of the day, I'll write down 5 of the funniest lines that I thought were entertaining.
Right.
And then work it. You in the car that day when we were driving throughout Texas, which, Lord have mercy, that's a huge state. But when you said you're trying to convey this bit to me that you were working on, you accidentally said this Freudian slip, I flunked homeschool. And you meant, I meant to say, I said, no, stop right there. That's funny.
Yeah.
It's the juxtaposition of in your house, there's you and one other person,
right,
and the teacher is your mom. And the person that loves you the most said, no, you're not going on to 5th grade. You're going to do it again.
You're the dumbest student I've ever had.
5th grade. I'm 18 years old. I know, but I don't want you to leave home. So you are flunking homeschool. You're going to do your senior year one more time. I can't let you go.
You are my prisoner.
Oh my gosh, so yeah, sometimes when neighbors or when you're just interacting at the airport, a store, a social situation, a banquet, and someone says something, nobody laughs, but I hear that and I think, oh man, I'm somehow, some way going to use that down the road. So I don't know how or what context, but
it's observing. So let me bring into our conversation a joke I know that you wrote, and it sounds observatory. You're observing something. Is that a word, observatory? Observational.
It's observational. Yeah.
Because I failed homeschool. I still can't speak English. So David, you have a bit where you say you have a neighbor and they're outside shoveling snow. Mm-hmm. Go ahead and finish that for me. How's that unwrap? And you saw this happen? Or did you make this up? And I mean, I know this is confessions of a comedian, so I got to be careful.
Well, I'll change the name to protect the innocent in case they catch this podcast. But let's call him Carl, older guy, a little rough around the edges. It's cold outside. It's snowing. He's wearing a sleeveless flannel T-shirt. Imagine Larry the Cable Guy with no teeth.
Got it.
And sees me on the front porch. I just hear something at night. I hear the shovel. I'm like, well, who in the name of sense is shoveling at 10 o'clock? I flip on my front porch light, and he sees me and waves. Hey, Dave, hey, how you doing there, buddy? I've been doing this for an hour, shoveling, and in between sentences, he's smoking. And then he puts the shovel down, takes a big puff, blows the smoke up into the cold winter air, and he points to the shovel and says, I'm telling you, that job someday is going to kill me. God. And I just stopped. Like, I can't write that.
Oh my gosh. And it's at 10 o'clock at night and this guy's chain smoking.
Well, he could not write that.
He's pointing to the shovel. Like that job's going to kill me.
Yeah. And then ironically, just a week later, something similar happened. And I've never used this line, but I wanted to, I'm kind of just, I've camped out on it for all these years. A week later, it wasn't him, somebody similar to him, that kind of a personality was putting gas in his car, and gas prices had just spiked. Mm-hmm. And and he's filling his car, and he's also smoking at a gas pump.
Holy jeez.
And says, "These gas prices are going to kill us."
But he's smoking while he's pumping gas.
Yeah, you just want to say, "Hey, buddy, just context. Think of what you just said, where you're at, and what you're doing."
So there's a chunk of jokes then, or that you have, because you have the smoking, snow shoveling guy, you've got the smoking, gas pumping guy, but then you also have the smoking laundry lady. So bring me into the context of that joke where she's taking her laundry off the clothesline.
Yeah, she's bringing in her laundry from the laundry basket.
So did you actually observe that there was a neighbor that was actually doing their laundry?
Yeah,
you got to be kidding me.
She's smoking, and I'm probably bashing people that are smoking. Well, I don't care. I mean, but she's got a laundry basket full of clean clothes, and she's smoking and just blowing smoke all over the clothes. And I thought, that's so contradictory of what your initial job was supposed to be,
right?
Bringing in clean clothes.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's like washing your hair and using a muffler as a blow dryer. I mean, that's the same premise.
So that right there, that simile, that like, this is like, let's hold on to that for a moment as a comedy writer, David. You have so many years. Go ahead and announce how many years you've been doing this.
Since we've been married full time in 1988, so 35 years.
Yeah, we're not married, but yes, I know you and Betsy are married.
Sorry about that. I should have clarified. I don't know who your audience is.
35 years. I know. I'm working on a bit right now. Let me sidestep called I Had Two Moms. But in modern day, when you say that, it can be confusing. And I'm trying to clarify I had two moms. One was white, one was black. And I'm working on that. And that is also somewhat edgy. So we need a ride across Texas to work on that joke. Okay. Back to your... I'm still stuck on that. I can't sleep at night when I keep saying those words. I have two moms. So let me go back to the simile or the like in comedy writing, because you've done it. I see you do it. I listen to you, and it's just awesome. Lady is taking the laundry in. Someone's attempting stand-up who's listening to this, or somebody loves comedy and goes to a show and hears a comic say, like, it's like, what's happening in the comic's mind? What are you doing?
That's a metaphor.
And what makes you write it in a way that makes the initial assumption funny and the second assumption even more funny?
The comic's mind is a little twisted in that the way we hear and observe scenarios, it's unlike the rest of the world or the general public. What the pedestrian eye sees, we see it with a different paradigm, a different set of lens. It's always the what if.
Okay.
So when I hear something, see something, observe something that is remotely funny, then I start doing the what if. It's almost like,
okay,
it's that metaphor. Yeah. What parts do you take out and put in that are comedic to make it funny? I use a line that works in where I live here in Indiana, and it doesn't always hit. It doesn't land with Republicans, but I say, even though we're in a small town here in Huntington, Indiana, we're also, a lot of people don't know this, we're the home to a comedy club. Pause. They're like, heads are scratching. Huntington's got a comedy. I said, yeah, it's the Dan Quayle Museum, which we actually have a Dan Quayle Museum.
Oh,
so that's probably the only political joke I do, and it only works here in Northeast Indiana, where people are familiar with the Dan Quayle Museum, the former vice president under George Bush in the late 80s. But just, it's the setup.
Right.
Oh, you have a comedy club, and then you stop and think about, you picture in your mind a club holds 300 people. There's a microphone, but then you flip it, and it's something completely different. I think that's the surprise is great for comedy. You didn't see it coming.
Yes.
You have a comedy club. Oh, tell us about the comedy club. Well, it's called the Improv, and no, it's not. It's It's completely different. I'm going to sucker punch you with something completely different.
Mm.
That's the joy of comedy.
And that's the comedic perspective. You're seeing not only the misdirection there, the surprise, but there's something there that I love about the contrast, but the comparison, because the lady who was, smoking, taking the laundry, it's like blow drying your hair with a muffler.
Correct.
Yeah.
The line I've been using the last 3 months, and man, it's such a fun line. And I didn't know that it would get the response when I first launched it, but it did. And when I got that response, I'm like, okay, there's something here.
Mm-hmm.
So about maybe 15 minutes into the set, and I've been struggling with weight a little bit. I'm not morbidly obese, but I'm not going to run a marathon anytime soon. And I just say to the crowd, I know you can't tell by looking at me, but I have a membership to a gym.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just shut your mouth and wait.
Mm.
And you get a few heavy guys that, and you get a few older, kind women that,
right.
And you wait 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And then I say, there's no punchline. I just wanted you to know. And you can't get the rest of the lineup because when you say, I just want you to know, there's a roar.
Yeah. Yeah, that was.
We all know that guy. We all work with that guy. We all go to church with that guy.
Mm-hmm.
We all have that guy in our family. I've got a membership to a gym.
Mm.
Good for you, Roger. How's it going? Good. Can you tell? So I flipped that.
Yeah.
Just want you to know I got a membership to a gym.
That's good. It is good. I got to tell you that the part about the gym joke, I gotta bring in your tag because it, I've seen you perform live. You have this deal about people that are walking into the gym are the most miserable people. I gotta unpack this joke writing, because one of the things about stand-up comedy is it's really a person and a microphone, right? It's not a guy with puppets and props. And I mean,
right.
we have some friends that do some prop comedy or signs.
Prop comedy. Absolutely. They're
but
very good
typically stand-up is a man, a woman, a person, somebody on stage with a microphone. It is not a lot going on, but you'll call back to radio. I had a little radio show in college back in the day. The theater of the mind is super powerful. To turn that on, you do this in this tag on that joke about the gym. You talk about people who are miserable, and you act out. You are amazing on your act outs. Your body language is rocking, but you act out people going to Golden Corral. Can we talk about this writing? Because it's brilliant writing. The idea is super cool, but the how you unpack this. Can you help me with this?
Well, we've all been to a gym.
Right.
And we've all seen the characters walking into a gym. And they're not there to hang and socialize, right?
Yeah.
It's a half hour of business. And the headphones are in, they're laser focused, and they're not wanting to chit chat with you and your kids or your life.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm in here for 30 minutes. Time is money, and I'm out of here.
Mm.
Well, what comedian wants to hang with those people? You may have this. You may get to the gym. There's this fat guy in the locker room sneaking a Snickers bar.
You're right.
I'll hang out and talk with that guy. Hey, give me some of that, like a drug dealer. Give me a hit of that. But then I juxtapose that to when the people I see walking into a restaurant. They're giddy. They're happy. They're going to go do the thing that God intended us to do. That's eat.
Yeah.
They're smiling. And then I say, I've seen 90-year-old women that just had hip surgery pop out of a wheelchair and just sprint to the doors that open at Golden Corral.
Yeah.
And then you act it out. I mean, you don't see that at a gym. You don't see that at the Y.
Yeah. So in comedy writing, you're using this phrase "act out." I said it earlier to kind of set up this conversation. People that go to a live comedy concert and they watch a comedian on stage. And what I love about this podcast, my goal is that we have conversations with people like yourself who are living it, doing it, but there's an earlier stage of attempting. But some of us that go to comedy events, even as a consumer of comedy, you see people do things on stage and you're like, what is that they're doing? And that phrase "act out," even as a comedy performer, you learn that you need to technically take your audience and put them in the situation of what you're making fun of. What have you done to be better at act outs? Because you are excellent at it. And I know that it's not a natural form of, I would call, expressing the joke or pulling people in. How's that worked for you? What have you done?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's a nice compliment. Thank you. I think the operative word is connection.
Mm.
When a pastor preaches, he wants to find a connection with the congregation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And sometimes stand up is like giving a sermon. You want to find a connection with the audience.
Chris Rock, actually.
You're telling a story that people in the audience say, oh, when you did that joke, you were describing me. That happened. When you told the story about kids, you're talking about our kids. When you told that story about your dad doing something really goofy and embarrassing in public, that's my dad.
Gotcha.
I mean, man, Tim, if we've done shows together, if we had a penny after a show, every time we heard someone say, felt like you were talking to me, you're describing my family. I mean, that's
it's connection.
It is.
Yeah, Chris Rock made the parallel because I think it was his grandfather who was a preacher. He said stand-up comedians are very similar to a preacher. And that connection is challenging. So to act it out, it makes it more personal.
Correct. The pastor's delivering truth.
Right.
The comedian is the pharmacist. God's the doctor. We're just dispersing dopamine.
Right. And then
endorphins.
And then in your act outs, is there any kind of, I don't want to use the word structure, but is there any kind of freedom that you use with that and how you express it? I know you have a great act out about middle schoolers. And
as I get older, as I get a little older, I don't have the energy. Like when I watch Jim Gaffigan, I don't know that the guy moves 2 steps.
Right.
I saw him do this bit where he was imitating a guy on a unicycle. And like how guys on unicycles like to show off in the way they do their feet back and forth and back. And Gaffigan's doing that. He does it for like 20 seconds. And then he stops. He goes, it's a funny bit, but it's not worth doing because it's so exhausting. So he doesn't move. But
that's awesome.
I do it like a little bit of the physical humor.
Okay.
I like to act certain bits out. I think sometimes just delivering the story is not enough for me. I need to kind of reenact or maybe portray a character, go into a different voice, just slide into that character and maybe make it a bit more 3D, if you will, rather than just a black and white movie. I want to get it right in your face. And I think that happens by kind of becoming that person or that character.
Yeah, the act out. That's powerful. It's not easy. Do you practice that? Is that something that you only do on stage per se, or is there a time?
All the time.
You practice it at home in front of Betsy?
Don't practice. I just do it. I live it.
Okay.
Honestly.
Really? So
honestly, it's not a tangible skill that's going to make me any money. It's not. I can't monetize being goofy. But in the car, I'm singing songs in different languages. I'm being different characters. I'm doing bits in my head. Sometimes when we're with friends at a restaurant, a waiter comes up, just going to a different voice, not because I love the attention, just because I'm bored with life. I just want to have fun.
So this is where I kind of nerd out a little bit because in my little, again, I'm so early on this journey. I tend to find great creativity when I'm driving at about 70 plus miles an hour. Mm-hmm. Or the opposite when I'm laying on a couch taking a nap. And it's the weirdest thing. My brain lights up and I'm, so for you on these act outs or imagining the expressional, physical comedy, are you role playing it in your mind? Because you're not in the car, or maybe you are in the car giving the voice.
Well, you described 2 scenarios for you when the creativity juices flow. For me, one is the car. I've driven past my destination before because I was so
100%.
laser focused thinking about a bit, a story,
100%.
a joke. Sometimes standing in the shower, Betsy would like, hey, our water bill just doubled.
Right. Most comics don't go home. They're out driving around.
Yeah. She's like, hey, the water bill doubled. Are you doing bits in the shower again? I think I did. I did a couple this week where I stood there for a long time and the water just hit my head. And no pun intended, the creative juices just began to flow. And it was just, again, you got to find your spot.
Yeah.
And I have Notepad app on my phone, and then I wish I could. I've got a folder, literally this folder. It's
I love
loaded.
it.
Every page is just filled with jots, notes, everything. And oftentimes I forget what I wrote down and I forget where I put it. And then I'm going through notes 6 months later and I find it. I'm like, oh, there's that bit. Ah,
I love it.
yeah, there's that. I forgot about that. I've not used pandemic jokes in ages. I'm looking here. Prior to the pandemic, I was 175 pounds. Pause. And when I say prior, I mean 1996. I mean, just, stuff I've just,
Yeah.
wow.
That's good. Man. The mind is a powerful tool, and I want to call back to rejection, David, because in attempting stand-up or any creative form, we can talk ourselves out of doing something. And so in your world, this is something I want to kind of drive home, and then we'll land this plane in a little bit. Testing new material. When you have, I've been told for comedians, when they have a full feature set, you've done, 1 hour shows solo, you've done specials, you recorded, you've done a bunch of content. That's when it's harder to test content because you're going, I don't know if I don't want to break this porcelain doll that I've built called my act.
Right.
So what drives you to test something, try something?
No, you're spot on. When they're recording, that's probably not the time where I'm going to use 10 minutes of new stuff.
Right.
But when it comes to a new bit, a new story, a new joke, I would call it like a sandwich scenario. So I've got 2 slices of bread that are absolutely amazing jokes.
Mm-hmm.
The bottom and the top. But on occasion, I might put a new piece of meat in the middle.
Mm.
I might take out the hamburger and replace it with roast beef, and let's just see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
But it's safe to do that because on either side is something tasty that works.
Mm-hmm.
So I do the bun, the joke, tasty. Oh, let's throw that middle one in there. Okay, it didn't go well, but here comes the other half of the sandwich, and I know that top half of the joke will
That's
kill.
good.
So it's safe. So I think an audience is pretty forgiving if a bit doesn't land with them. That's okay. If you've got something that you follow that up with that is tasty and works. That's my theory. Other guys work a little differently. They could do 5 jokes in a row that are brand new, and it does not bother them. Even if 3 out of 5 don't hit, they don't care.
Mm.
For me, one is grace. 1 joke doesn't work. 2, okay, you don't want a third one that falls flat.
Right.
You can do 1 or 2, but then you got to come back with a third one that's from your back pocket that has worked for years, and you got to hit him with that.
Can we talk?
I can't stand three jokes of silence because then the audience is in their mind thinking, did we come to the right show?
That's like donating blood for an hour.
That's it. You drained them.
Yeah,
correct.
I had to put that metaphor in there. Is it a metaphor? My language is broken today.
Well, sometimes the audience is like a vampire, and they do suck the blood right out of you.
Oh goodness. Oh, David, tell me to land this plane when it comes to attempting stand up, what keeps you going? Because I know that 35 years and counting, and it's not, people, we've been on the road together. We've not met a hotel that we love. I think you and I'll just kind of take a sidestep. I'll never forget, we were on the road in New York. We had 3 shows in New York, a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And, when you're doing a weekend, typically you're driving to the next city, but we actually didn't. We were staying at the same hotel, which is nice. So you don't have to pack or unpack. But the problem is you get bored. So we went to the movies. Do you remember that? We went out to the movies. That's a fun middle day, kind of filling time. But most people don't comprehend that the road is exhausting because you're performing at night. And so, so for you, how do you keep going in this? Because the endurance, you know what I mean? Most people that are attempting stand-up or starting, they're looking for their first 5 minutes. I'm still looking for my first 3 minutes, But for you in this endurance race, what has helped you 35 years to stay on this track?
Enthusiasm, the love of the job. Larry Bird, one of the great NBA players of all time, he came out of Indiana State University, and his first contract with the Boston Celtics, he had a writer put in his contract that said, when the season's over, I can play any park, any city, any court, any gym, anywhere, anytime. It's the love of the game contract is what they called it. So if I'm not performing a laugh all night show or a marriage date night or a David Dean comedy show somewhere, I have a love of the game contract in my life with God that I can volunteer at my local grade school and tell jokes to kids. Or I can go into the gas station or a grocery store, Kroger here in town, and tell a joke and be silly with a friend I've known for years that's going through chemo. It's the love of the game. It's you've said this a number of times. This is your calling. It's my calling. So I can't harness it. It's a wild horse that has to run somewhere, and I let it go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find that if I'm not being creative, I'm dying. There is that, call it, creative spirit that you want to keep alive, but also on the comedy front, for you understand that laughter is impacting lives. I mean, it's a blast. When it comes to where you're going in your writing, can you talk to me for a moment as we land this plane about comedy writing? And this is specifically what I'm interested in. We have chatted about subject matter, and when people are writing comedy in comedy class that I'm deep diving in right now, there's the question about subjects, and you pick different subjects to write jokes about. But you've done this for a long time, and you don't have to share all of them, but maybe you can share kind of like the highlights. But you have really identified key subjects that are very relevant and relatable, but also in your own life, you're able to really write content for. Can you talk to me a minute about attempting stand-up under the guise of how do I identify subjects to write jokes about?
That's a great question. I mean, you have to perform what you know. You do commentary on what you've experienced. I've never given birth to a child, so how am I going to stand up in front of an audience and say, "Oh, my second trimester, it was," but have I had a colonoscopy? Have I been that guy that has trouble navigating my new cell phone? Yeah. So I'm going to do commentary to an audience on issues that I think are funny or have dealt with personally that I can relate with.
Okay.
Now that when I send that net out to the audience, Tim, it may not pull in every age and every demographic sitting in that room.
Right.
But I hope that at some point in that 40 to 60 minute set, a good portion of that audience says, I could relate. So I'm just a quick example. I'm doing this thing on age. I turned 58 this year, and what's happening at 58, the paradigm I'm living in at 58. So all your 40s and 50s and boomers are listening and laughing, and your 20s and 30s are kind of staring. So I go after them a little bit. And I say, well, here's what to expect. Here's what's going to happen to you in the next 25 years. So enjoy that Maserati, that Tesla that you're driving right now. Because in about 25 years, it's going to be a Gremlin. It's going to be a Pinto. And here's what you're going to experience. So I'm telling them what I lived through when I was young, and that chapter's closed and where I'm at now. So to answer your question, I think I'm doing material that I'm very familiar with, and I'm comfortable talking about it. And I enjoy stepping on toes of both the young and old in that 4-minute bit. It's so enjoyable because when I'm attacking the millennials, the old timers are laughing hard and wiping tears. And when I go after the old timers, they're still laughing hard because boomers are not humor impaired. They've lived through Don Rickles and Rodney Dangerfield and all these put down comics. This new young generation coming up, a bit more sensitive.
Good perspective. I was with
and
you.
I want to address that. I wanted to address that with them. I say to them, I'm certain there's things I've said tonight that have triggered you, millennials. I may have hurt your feelings. I've stepped on toes. And I know at some point you're going to have to step outside and take a bite of your emotional support pizza and vape. I get it.
And I was in the room.
When you were with me Friday night in Sebastian, Florida, yes. I found out later a couple stepped out into the church parking lot. Her husband vaped and she was eating a slice of pizza. She was 4 months pregnant. And I had so many staff people tell me, they ran to me after the show and said, you won't believe what just happened.
Wow.
That's God saying, I affirm what you said.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I was in the room that night. You and Michelle Miller McNair were performing 2 comics. You had an amazing set. And when you did that bit about, the millennials need to step out and eat their support pizza and vape, you held it. Now, because this is comedy writing, but it's performing. You held the audience in a pause, kind of like a Dave Chappelle, like he would just, sit back, lean back, hold the mic, pause, which I'm so green and early on this. Help me understand that thinking process on stage, because you held the pause so long, it got a clap, and people were thinking and feeling that emotion. I hope I didn't answer your question, but
no, that is great insight. And if a comedian tells you they know when that's going to happen, it's a barefaced lie. We don't know until it occurs. And oftentimes we're as shocked as the audience. And that particular night and that particular line and that particular moment, as we call it, lightning in a bottle, it started from the back. This laughter tsunami that just pushed its way forward to the stage and knocked me over. And I waited. I wasn't gonna tear that line up. I wasn't gonna jump on it quick. Step back and wait.
So the lightning in a bottle, the listening to the audience. Jim Gaffigan has a line where he says comedians are the best observers of people, and the reading expressions and listening to the room. Where I think the error, and I'm guilty. I'm young and I'm not young as an age, but I am young and attempting stand up.
Yeah.
Where I'm speeding through jokes and I'm not letting the audience breathe and listen. But I'm not also observing maybe, oh my gosh, they like that one, so let it linger. I think it was Seinfeld that said it to Louis C.K. that he was stepping on the laughter and had to let it breathe a little bit. For you in that observation, because there are people that go to comedy shows and see that happen, and then there are people that write jokes and get on stage and are trying to technically deliver their jokes properly. Help me understand the comedic's role in that process, to observe, listen to the audience, because you do it well.
Yeah, experts call it like the comedy pause, where you say something funny and they laugh, and then it goes throughout the room and then they laugh more. And you have to have the self-control, the wherewithal to stop and just let that ride. That means you're doing your job. And Seinfeld swears that if that happens 3 times in your show, where you have to wait for the audience laughter to subside before you can continue talking, 3 times, he says, is a good night. I'm lucky if I get 1 to 2. On occasion, I get 3, but I'm thrilled to get 1 or 2. And to me, that means you've done your job. I did my job tonight. That was a joke where I had to pause and wait for people to catch their breath and wiping tears. And when people are looking, couples are looking at each other, friends are looking at each other and nodding with affirmation, you're like, okay,
yeah,
I hit the spot. And it doesn't happen very often.
Yep.
And I promise you, you continue you will have that moment when you tell a joke and there's a response that you have to wait for. I'm not kidding. It's around the corner for you, my friend.
Well, I think that response for me will be when I throw my ball at Daisy after I tell her a joke. Because sometimes the laughter that comes from my dog is very similar to the laughter that comes from the audience.
Can I
I just want you to know that out of my heart.
Can I tell you another? I know you're trying to wrap this up.
No, I love this as long as you want.
I have a dear friend named Roger Bizot here in Huntington County. I was on the road a few years back, and I had him on speakerphone in the car. It was a long drive, and I'm talking to him. I've done this before with you, where it's a long drive. Let's just chat for a while so I can stay awake. And I'm talking with Roger, and I did not know. Well, before I go any further, Roger says to me, "Hey, I got to let you go on this phone call. I'm taking a walk with Sadie, and he says maybe we can chat tomorrow." Okay, see, and we hang up.
Okay.
And I thought, Roger's wife is named Cindy. Who in the name of sense is that like a niece or a friend or a neighbor or somebody from the youth group? Or
right?
It just bothered me because he said it so matter of fact. I'm walking with Sadie. This is kind of our time. I thought he's having an affair.
Oh, jeez.
Calling back, said, "Listen, brother, if I'm out of line, let me know. But this is on my heart. Can you tell me who Sadie is?" Oh, I forgot to tell you. We got last week we picked up a golden retriever. When I told him the story, we laughed the next 30 seconds because I was so heartbroken to think he had left Cindy for Sadie.
Oh, jeez.
So I think sometimes when you talk about Daisy, I need to clarify. It's our dog.
Yeah, I do need to clarify.
I'm just not out in the woods with Daisy.
I was sleeping with Daisy earlier. We were. She can tongue. I'll tell you.
Big. Oh my.
So, oh gosh, David, I thank you. I'm not done yet. I have something else I want to dive into with you, and then we'll end with you telling us how we can follow you, find you, laugh with you. What would you say to someone attempting stand-up?
Oh, just
getting started. Hey, maybe you went to a comedy show.
Do I know them or not?
No, you don't know them. Maybe they went to a comedy show. I've always wanted to do this. What would you say? Because you've been there. You went from Second City to the Improv Olympics, all the way back, circled around. Now you've been all over the country.
Yeah, it's not for everybody. It is for everybody. Everybody should, at some point in their life, stand in front of an audience and tell jokes, as you are doing. I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to see if this works. Mm-hmm. Go for it. But it's not meant for everybody. It's broccoli. It's an acquired taste. It's not meant for everybody. Is it out there to be consumed? Yeah. Mm. But I think there was this is so America. In the mid-late 80s, there was like a comedy club explosion. Mm-hmm. They were in every town, every block. There were 2 and 3. They franchised them like Family Dollar. They were just everywhere.
Right.
Why? Because number one, HBO was putting out specials, and everybody was watching these comedy specials, and they wanted to go see their favorite comic, and they wanted to go see the warm-up act, and they wanted to see the Thursday night midweek talent, and then open mic, and just everybody became a comedian. And so American in us, because it was too much too soon and oversaturated, and it almost kind of killed stand-up for about a decade. And then now we've got this little uptick. There's been waves and ebbs and flows since the 80s, don't get me wrong, but kudos and hats off to Nate Bargatze for doing clean comedy that's insightful, smart, funny. But it is a bit misleading. I watch certain movies, certain action movies, and I think to myself, I think I could do that stunt.
Right. Yeah. No.
I saw Tom Cruise in the latest Mission Impossible movie, and he's on a motorcycle and drives off a mountain. His parachute. I think I could do that. And then I watch YouTube videos of how many times they did it and how it was done. I'm like, oh, I'd kill myself. So I think it's good for people to at least attempt stand-up,
right,
to appreciate how difficult and how intrinsically frustrating it can be. I fancied myself to being a teacher one day when I was young, and then I spent some time in a classroom. I'm like, it's not for me.
Right.
So try it, sample it, but more than likely they're going to walk away. The comedy gods are going to eat you alive, but at least go tempt it, right?
Right.
Because you have thick skin. How did your siblings describe you? As naively
optimistic or naively confident? Yeah, something to that
not everybody
effect.
has that.
Yeah, there's a rhino skin.
You could have a crowd eat you up, but you're one of the exceptions where you're like, I'm going to go back tomorrow.
You were with me in Waco, Texas, where they were eating me up, but I was laughing at them with me, laughing at me, and that was the comedy that night. We worked it. We were twisting it a little bit, but it was definitely.
Here's the beauty, though. You went back and tried it again. There's a lot of people that fall once and they're like, I'm done. I'm not doing that again.
Yeah, well, that's the test, tweak, and repeat mindset I have, and I believe comedy writing. Jerry Seinfeld said, "There's not a finished joke. You're constantly rewriting or working it or reorganizing the set." I'm addicted to that. To me, it's an unfinished puzzle, and I kind of look at it as put the like 3 puzzles in one box and then go work the puzzle. That's kind of where my brain's at, and that energizes me. Sometimes it frustrates others. You, David Dean, comedy. How can we find you, follow you, cheer you on, watch your material?
Just Google at David Dean Comedy. It's pretty easy. At David Dean Comedy. Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, MySpace, post office.
David, I'm sorry I wasn't situationally in the beginning, but I'm going to meet you at the post office and I'm going to wear the beanie next time. I like the beanie. And I'll find you at the post office and I'm going to look you up in the white pages. Okay.
I look like I work in a shipping yard today because it's 35 degrees.
I love it.
Got my
Popeye
cap.
I love it. Thanks for being a friend. Thanks for being a fellow champion for laughter and bringing comedy to, families and audiences all around the country, individuals. So keep on keeping on, and I'll keep on cheering you on. And before I go, P.S. I stole your candy.
Oh, good and plenty.
Yeah, I stole your candy. When you did the show in Sebastian that I drove you to, David Dean's favorite candy on the road is Good and Plenty. And oftentimes when I pick him up at the airport for a show, I'll have some hidden in the car. So that weekend, you were busting out to jump on the next ride, and you left your candy behind. So I took it to the Funny Bone in Orlando for the comedy class and pounded it down during comedy class.
Well, maybe tonight by campfire you can share that with Daisy. Okay. The two of you just can nibble on that little romantic.
Thank you.
By the fire snack.
Thank you, David. Continue on bringing laughter, man.
Thanks,
you're a good man.
Thanks. Love you, buddy. Thanks.
Love you too. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Attempting Stand-Up Comedy Podcast. Subscribe on YouTube at Tim Cambridge Comedy. That's Tim Cambridge Comedy. And also follow me on Instagram at Tim Cambridge, and subscribe to listen to the podcast wherever you enjoy downloading your favorite episode of whatever you're listening to. Remember, be an endless learner, have the courage to take the stage, and let's enjoy more laughter in our lives. And thanks for tuning in to the Attempting Stand-Up Comedy Podcast. I'm Tim Cambridge.